Have you ever tried to build a nation in Football Manager while not playing in that nation? Well, that's exactly what we're doing in the Canada Build a Nation by way of Portugal with the club Rabo de Peixe in the 4th division of Portuguese football. The goal of this save is to use Rabo de Peixe as a headquarters for Canadian development in Portugal by bringing players from Canada to Portugal to use as a stepping stone club to give them better European careers and development. Rabo de Peixe is one of the island clubs in the Portuguese region known as the Azores. It has a strong cultural tradition of folklore, music, and festivals, and the club was founded in 1985. There's actually a Netflix show based upon a crazy story that happened on this island that kind of changed the whole trajectory of it as well. As for the guidelines of this save, we're only going to be signing Canadian or partially Canadian players and local island players as well. All tactics will be made from scratch with an emphasis on data and week-to-week adjustments, and I'm going to make it as much of a true coaching simulation as I can. In terms of long-term goals for this save, we want to become an established first division Portuguese club, win a domestic and European trophy, attain 5-star youth recruitment, gain affiliations with both Toronto FC and York United FC, and eventually become the head coach of Canada. And finally, one portion of the save that I really love is how my community has been able to get involved. A number of created players have come through the save in both Canadian and Portuguese players, and anyone is allowed to become a player or a staffer on my team or on another team by joining the Discord and going into the Build a Nation tab to see how that works. So with all that out of the way, I think we can get straight into Season 1 of the Canada Build a Nation by way of Rabo de Peixe. All right, so let's jump into this save and kind of run you through what happened in Season 1. This one's going to be just a little bit different because I'm going to show you the totality of Season 1 instead of starting at the start, middle, and end, because I feel like with a lot of saves, the first season in these challenges is really the one where you're creating your own identity for the team and you get rid of a lot of old players, you bring in a lot of new players, and you're creating your own thing. So there's a lot of players at the start that we kind of got rid of throughout the season. There's a lot of players that we brought in the middle. So it doesn't really make sense to kind of cover a lot of the players at the start because they're not really going to play a key part of this story. So I'm going to run you through some of the players that were key guys throughout this season, some of the big games from this season, and where we ultimately ended up in Season 1 and how that sets us up for Season 2. So let's just get right into it. So a little bit about this club. It's very, very interesting. Despite being in the 4th division and being semi-pro, the training facilities and youth facilities are really solid. We have 2-star, which is a really good starting point. At the end of the season, my bank balance is negative 67,000, but at the start of the season, it was about 50,000. But we're going to try and supplement that by, doing some profitable friendlies in the preseason as well as, and trying to do our best in the cup. So a little bit about the club. We play in a 2,500 capacity stadium. I wouldn't really call it a stadium, mini stadium, whatever you want to call it. The field conditions perfect, so that's cool. And our coach is Theo de Rosario. So he's a 39-year-old Portuguese Canadian coach, and the cool thing about him is that I made him to be the cousin of Dwayne de Rosario, the Canadian striker for the national team, who is a bit of a legend. So his style is pretty open. He likes hardworking players and promoting youth players and developing them. So that's kind of where I put his skill set to start. In this save, I'm trying to do more media handling to kind of try to create a character for him. And in terms of him as a coach, I can kind of go into who else we hired for staff as well. So my assistant coach is a Canadian Portuguese player who actually played 13 caps for Canada as well, Fernando Aguirre. Pretty good basis of skills, 53 years old, and was already coaching in Portugal. So I think that's kind of a perfect mix of what we're looking for in terms of a coach. We also have Pedro Gil, who is our head of youth development. This is the one coach who is just out and out Portuguese. There weren't many staff members who were willing to come and be our head of youth development, but for this level in 4th division football, I think he a set of attributes. Finally, Dwayne de Rosario. I brought Cuzzo over to the club. He's played a long, historic career in the MLS, becoming Toronto FC's all-time leading goal scorer, and isn't the best coach in terms of ability, but doesn't have, any terrible weaknesses. He's got a good starting point for a coach, 15 determination, so I'm hoping he has good potential as a coach and can kind of rise through the ranks alongside his cousin Theo de Rosario. Some interesting things about what we're doing in this save too is that, Discord members and Twitch chatters can become players or coaches. So we had 2 people become coaches. Tomer Longstick is a really fun U19s coach that one of our chatters, Maddie, created based off an old coach that he had. So he was a goalkeeping coach that turned into a U19s coach, and I gave him some pretty good potential So he's actually rising really well. I wouldn't be surprised if he got poached from us to become like another like fourth division, third division Portuguese head coach in the future. So just been fun to see him. And then his assistant is Jack Turnhow, one of our chatters, who's created himself as a Portuguese Canadian assistant coach to help Maddie. And the fun thing is about these coaches is I gave them, good ability to be head coaches and maybe become, people that we play against in the future. All right, so let's get into how the squad looks at the end of season 1 and kind of some of the players who were important to us, how we split up the appearances, and how this squad is going to carry us forward into season 2. And then we can kind of look at some of the results that this squad was able to put onto the field. So in terms of who played the most on this team, there was one Canadian and then there was one Portuguese player who both played 29 times. The first, Zacharia Abdi. He came from the North Toronto Nitros on a free. And the one thing that I did at the start of the save to kind of make it a little bit more RP, role playing, was that as Rabo Depeche, and with this situation that we have, we wanted to have a affiliation with a Toronto-based club where my coach is from, where a lot of Portuguese immigrants actually went to when they immigrated to Canada, was the Toronto area. So we decided to affiliate ourselves with a lower division Toronto side, North Toronto Nitros. We brought 2 players from that team, and the first one was Zacharia Abdi. He is a 6'5" center back whose best abilities are that jumping reach and that tenacious, center back ability with good tackling, good positioning, good aggression, 13 jumping reach, and being 6'5". I think the thing that you get out of him that's a little extra special is that he's either footed. I think he's going to be the crux of our center back position in the 4th division for a good amount of time. Moving on to our next player, João Ventura was the MVP of this season. He was a player that's already been here for a number of years. 2022 is his first year. He is an Azores region local, originally starting in Opereira dos Açores, which is one of our kind of regional rivals in this region. And we played him as a inverted wing on the right, and he really had a good season. I think he had a better first half of the season than a second half of the season, scoring 12 goals in total across all competitions and pitching in 9 assists. At the start of the save, we signed him to a 2-year deal. He is our captain. He is going to be a key player for us on the wing. The next highest cap player was Pedro Tavares, who was Zacharia Abdi's, center back combo partner on the left side, on the right side. Abdi played on the left. Just a big-bodied center back, kind of like a worse version of Abdi at 31, but very solid. No complaints from me here. Maybe he'll start next season, depending on who else we bring in, but at worst, he's a backup for next season. Behind him is another, Azores region local, Rafa Benavides, midfielder who's been here since 2020. We played him at the 10. We played him at the 8. He was very versatile. Didn't do much in terms of scoring. I think he was like the link-up guy. He never made like the crucial pass to create a goal in terms of assists, but he was doing those hockey passes that connected the play in the midfield. The next guy is our first created player from the chat. So one of our chatters wanted a Portuguese local, like a future captain type player, and that is Helder Frutuoso, just a bomb it down the wing, left wing back who has a strong right foot and a weak left foot. So it's a little bit interesting. He likes to get forward. He likes to knock the ball past the opponent. He has a high work rate, really good leadership, and really good physicals that he relies on. At 6'1" and at 21, a lot of room developed, and he's from the island, so this is a super fun player, to kind of contrast with the Canadian players that we're bringing in. Fed a lot of assists this season to João Ventura that you'll see a little bit later. Another player, Matthew Nogueira, was another Canadian player that we brought in to be our number 1 goalkeeper. He had experience in Portugal already with some of his, experience at Maritimo, came from the Benfica Academy before going to the USA for a little bit and then coming back to Portugal. We scooped him from York United, which is a CPL team, the Toronto CPL team that, eventually I would like to be affiliated with. But he was a solid keeper for us. There are some games where he really just shit the bed, honestly, and it was a little bit disappointing. But I'm still not sure whether he's going to be our number 1 keeper for next season. This is probably our best created player that was Canadian in terms of on-field performance. Played the 10, played the left wing, played the right wing. I think he projects best as João Ventura's, long-term replacement because he's inverted in that same way. However, with his ability and his tendencies, he likes to cut in and try to shoot as opposed to play make. So we definitely saw that for better or for worse in a lot of situations. The next player was a guy that was really key for us in the first half, but fell off a little bit in the second half. 37-year-old Azores region local, Minhoka, who was kind of our enganche 10, who just linked up the play, tried those killer balls, but kind of ended up doing the same things that Rafa Benavides did oftentimes. I thought he was okay. We're not going to bring him back in the next season because he doesn't want to stay, and he's also a little bit older, and he's on one of the highest wages on the team. So I think we can find his contributions in a cheaper player for next season. Then we have probably our biggest wage signing and probably the best Canadian real-life player that we were able to bring in Jesse Costa, who is a Canadian-Portuguese dual national that we scooped from the Wolfsburg Academy. In real life, I think he went to go play for a Brazilian first division team, but for us, he was a pretty solid, versatile player. We played him a good amount at right wing back just because we needed cover there, but I think he's better more like a 6, maybe an 8. He's very versatile. That's why I like him a lot. And he's getting Canadian U20 caps. So it's cool to have a player like this on our club to kind of show how valuable Rabo de Peixe can be as a development club for Canada in Europe. After that, we have Diego Mozzi, who is a versatile wing who can play both sides. Portuguese local, a guy that I really enjoyed. Definitely want to bring him, keep him for a few seasons because he has a really complete skill set for a wing of this level and can play both sides comfortably. 4 goals and 2 assists on the season. Very solid for us. The next guy is Juan Delgadillo, Zachary Abdi's teammate. He is a North Toronto Nitros alum, DM, kind of, played well as an 8, but ultimately we are letting him go to another Azores region team, an SP Ideal. They don't necessarily have a active league in the game, but he was okay. I think we can improve on this spot, so we're going to let him go. He's going to stay in Portugal, which helps, with our, development of bringing Canadians to Europe, but just didn't do enough for us. The next player, Madeira, who is actually from the Rabo de Peixe Academy. We needed some striker help, and to be honest, he just didn't do it for us this season. He had scored 44 goals across 3 years in the division below us in the Azores region. But when we brought him back to the 4th division of Portuguese football, he could just not do it. So he's going to be leaving at the end of the season as well. So our next mid-season signing was Paul Amendume. He was one of the guys that we brought along with Jesse Costa. Played really good in that anchor role, ultimately taking the previous player Juan Delgadillo's position. And despite not having a ton on the attribute side, I think his physical ability, most notably that strength, really helped him lock down that anchor spot. I think for next season, he probably projects as a competitor for Tavares in that right side center back position next to Abdi. Our backup goalkeeper was Valerio Branquino, who at some points played better than Matthew Nogueira, but really is just a backup, so not much to say there. Lucas Asari is another created player from our chat. Hardworking Ghanaian Canadian who played in Portugal for a little bit. We brought him over. He was a backup right back with a ton of potential. I'm hoping he can take over the starting right back position for season 2, but it also depends who else we might bring in. Antonio Carrero is a Azores region local who can play either wing spot. I see him as kind of like a worse Diego Mati with room to improve. So breakthrough prospect type of player. Guy is a really interesting creative player from one of our chatters. He wanted to make him to be the son of the first ever Aboriginal Canadian player. And that player is Terry Felix. So in this, lore, Guy is his son. We brought him over from the White Caps Academy on a free, and now he's still trying to acclimate to European football. He did okay in his first season. We're still trying to understand what his best position in our system is, but I think for season 2, there's definitely room to improve. Another creative player is Mateus Costa Lopez, a pretty complete midfielder. I think he is one of the most well-rounded midfield prospects in this team. I think he can compete for Benavides for that starting 8 spot next season. And in the limited time he did play, because he didn't join us until January this season, I think he showed flashes of becoming a good starting midfielder for this team. Finally, we had players Edgar Mora, who didn't really play too much, just a fringe player who's leaving at the end of this year, and Elson Santos, very similarly. Just 2 guys who didn't get on the field too much and are going to be leaving. So that moves us on to our development center. And there are a few created players sitting there as well who weren't able to kind of get much playing time this season just because of our rotation. And there's two. We got Flaw, the Canadian Irish striker that our chatter, How We Roll Owen, made in the likes of a Jamie Vardy type builds. He played one league game this season and didn't do well. I really just wanted him to acclimate in the youth system. We struggled for striker output in this season, but Flaw definitely wasn't the answer in this season. I'm hoping in season 2, maybe he can help out, maybe go on a loan. I'm still not sure what to do with him. And then finally, our last created player that was able to get on the field for a good amount, a few appearances, was Something Quan, Quantify's created player, a Vietnamese Canadian with a crazy mohawk, just an absolute ball winner, aggressive midfielder who's just going balls out every single time he's on the field with an endless motor. I think we can find a way for him to work into the rotation in season 2. We played an anchor last season. I think we might go towards a DLP in that 8 spot or in that 6 spot for next season. I think Something Quan could be a really key bench piece that comes in and kills off games, or when we need to kind of be a bit more defensive against better teams, he can kind of roam and take down like the other team's best 9 or 10 or just kind of mark them tightly. So we'll see what Something Quan does in the second season. Outside of that, there was a pretty good amount of youth academy players that came through. Obviously, at this level, and with our ability of our general manager and scouts to dictate how, to kind of interpret the potential, it kind of can be misleading at this level. So there's a lot of high potential players. We're going to have to sort through them and see. But we have guys like De Gea, a Brazilian Portuguese guy, Hugo Agra, Leandro Catojo, Eduardo Pires, who was here with us last season, so we're trying to still figure out what he can do. Bruno Carajola, Joaquim Santos, Renato Diaz, Rafael Fischer, and Bernardo Resende, who I think actually has a lot of potential. I see this guy as possibly the future of I possibly see this guy as the keeper of the future for this club as an academy kid. I think the reflexes and aerial reach that high at 16 with 17 determination, and the arrows just keep going up. I really like what I see in this guy, and he was already here when we got here in terms of the academy. So how it works in 4th division Portuguese football is there are 4 groups of 14. You're randomly assigned into your group. This season we are in Prio Campeonato de Portugal Prio D with 14 teams. The bottom 5 get automatically relegated, and then the top 2 move into a playoff promotion group stage with other teams from the other top 2 teams from the other 3 groups. Unfortunately, this season, we fell 3 points shy of getting into those promotion spots. However, I would say our season overall was a success. So how it works when you get into these promotion groups is that you go into either Group A or Group B, and you play 6 total games. The top 2 teams from each of those groups go up, and then, the top 2 teams play in one final game for a kind of like a playoff final type thing to be crowned the champions of their promotion group. But if you're in the top 2 of your group, you automatically go up. So that's kind of how it works in regards to the Portuguese 4th division. In terms of how our season went overall, it was definitely roller coastery. We had a lot of optimism at the start of the save in terms of how our results went. In the first 2 months, in August and September, we didn't lose a game. We won 6 of our first 8 games in total, and in those 2 games that we tied, we only conceded 1 goal at most in our first 8 games, which is pretty impressive, including an extra time 2-1 win over Lusitano Açores. Despite getting a red card in the 33rd minute, we were able to steal one in extra time with a 99th minute goal from João Ventura, despite getting peppered all game after that red card. So that was really nice to see. But kicking off October is where we kind of got gut punched and realized, this league is not super, super easy. We lost 3-0 to Vasco Gama, which was a team that wasn't even really on the radar for getting promoted, but absolutely just dominated us with efficient goal scoring, 5 shots on target and 3 through. We played our backup keeper that game because Nogueira had been a little hurt. and he put up a 6.0, so that was pretty disappointing. We had a little friendly window during this time because of international break, so we played a friendly, but then we went on to the second round of the Portuguese Cup, and in that second round, we lost 3-1 to Gil Vicente, which is a Portuguese top division club. So we weren't expecting to do much against them. But honestly, we didn't play too bad. We were able to get 11 shots, 3 on target. They just had, 3 times the shots, and they were more efficient with their chances and scored 3 against us. We would recover with a 2-0 win against Oriental Lisboa. But in November, that was probably our worst overall month. We did a fun thing that we're going to do in each season. We're hosting a friendly tournament. I forgot to do it in the first preseason, so I did it during this long international break. The Azores Cup, a friendly tournament that we host with 3 other Azores region-based teams. We lost to Operario de Azores in the final 2-3, but it's something we're going to do throughout the seasons. In regards to the regular season, we tied Lusitania Avora, and then we lost to Barrense 0-2, which would be the team ultimately that we were kind of competing for that second promotion group stage spot. And they only put 2 shots on target, and we're able to get both of them past Matthew Neguero. So it was performances like this from our Canadian keeper that made me question whether he should be the one moving forward for season 2. Fortunately, we were able to recover and beat Lusitania Azores 3-0, the same team we beat in the first round of the Cup. But in December, we lost to eventual group leaders Lagoa 0-1 and then to Castrense 2-0 as well. We rallied a little bit in January with a 2-1 win against Reguenos and Lulatano, but then again, roller coaster. Like I said, 0-1 to Olympico de Montijo, and then a 3-0 drubbing in just what was a total FMing. We put 11 on target, 2.21 XG. Our best player, Ventura, had a 7.4 with 2 clear-cut chances, but we couldn't get one past their keeper, who ended up having a 9.1, Igor Bessalotti. So that was pretty impressive from the Brazilian keeper. We watched that one. We're playing this whole save live on Twitch, and we literally could not believe the way this keeper was playing, just playing like Prime Allison or something. But yeah, that was a real gut punch. I feel like this was the game that kind of made me like a little bit nervous. We should have beat this team, and to lose 3-0 was a real big gut punch. However, we rallied after that. I was worried, but then we rallied, and it still wasn't enough. We tied Parense 1-0. We beat Atletico CP 3-0. We beat Vasco Gama de Figueira 1-0. Beat Oriental Lisboa 2-1. Lusitano Avora 0-0. Beat that second place team, Barrense 2-1, to kind of catch up to them. And then these are the 2 games that we fumbled the most. This one, Lusitano Azores 3-3, is the most disappointing game of the season, easily. We were up 2-0 at halftime with a 28th minute goal by Carrero and a 29th minute goal from Bacalhau. And then Ventura put us up 3-0 in the 58th minute, and then 65th, 68th, and then finally 87th minute goals allowed Lusitano Azores to tie 3-3. And at that point, after that 3-3, we literally could not catch up to second place Barrense. We tied league leaders Lagoa 2-2, and then we beat Castrense 2-1 to finish it off. But as you saw a little bit earlier in the video, we are 3 points behind Barrense. They just had 3 less draws than us. We had 7 draws on the season, and they had 1 more loss. So we were right there. Like, we were in punching distance the entire time, which makes it feel a little bit more, it just hurts a little bit more. And, Lusitano Azores were just kind of a thorn in our side despite beating them in our first 2 games against them in the Cup and in the league. That 3-3 tie really screwed us, and it's kind of funny that a regional rival made that happen. Yeah, that's kind of how the first season went overall. We're looking for new players to bring in terms of who our best guys were. It was definitely João Ventura, top goal scorer, top highest average rating, most assists. I mean, at the end of the day, that's not what you want. You don't want to be relying on one player for literally everything, especially a 31-year-old captain. You want to be able to lean on him for certain things, but not everything. And so overall, season 2 was just a little bit disappointing just because of how close we were to promotion playoffs, but it wasn't really to be expected. I think in order to get to that spot, we need to improve at the goalkeeper position, the striker position, and then also just get some good center back depth, as well as developing that young core of young players that can either stay on this team or maybe be transferred out for some wages and finances that we can use to upgrade the team in other spots and create a more well-rounded roster that has a lot more depth and that can push into Portuguese Division 3 and become a solid team there in order to hopefully become professional as well, because we're semi-pro. So if you enjoyed this, I'm going to be doing a video like this for every season of the save, the Canada Build a Nation times Rabo Depeche Build a Nation on Twitch at Dill40K. We're also doing some fun YouTube short stuff. And if you want to get involved in the save, like I said, there's ways to create players in the Discord. So make sure to join that. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is a little bit new for me. Just these more casual 15 to 25 minute check-in videos for each season of the save. I just want to provide another way to kind of consume this save because, on Twitch, it's hard to follow all that stuff. It creates a good time capsule for me to keep track of what's going on in the save and be able to look back on. And then for people, who create players and get involved, they can look back on it too. And then overall, I think it's just a fun way to make a save feel more lived in and feel like we're creating more of a story also on YouTube and not just on Twitch. So like I said before, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in season 2.